6 minutes per game. So a strong season, but I mean, his prior 3 seasons with the Pacers, 4.3 points per game, 17 minutes, less than 50% shooting. This guy did win a championship with the Dallas Mavericks, but at the time he was the third string center behind Tyson Chandler and Brendan Haywood. Just seeing the Pacers get Al Jefferson for $10 million a year, who I believe definitely has a bigger upside than Mahimi, who's getting $16 million a season with the Wizards. Definitely seems like a WTF contract, and he's number 7 on the list. Number 6 on the list, a guy that even the desperate Mavericks didn't even try to re-sign. That's Chandler Parsons. Signed with the Memphis Grizzlies, max deal, 4 years, $94.8 million, so nearly $24 million a season. 2 years with Dallas after signing a 3-year deal. Didn't take his player option this season. 127 games, 14.8 points, 5.5 rebounds, 3 assists per game. Okay, decent numbers, but 2 straight years where he's had a knee injury, had to undergo knee surgery, which shortened his season last year. So both years the Mavericks made the playoffs, but in those 2 years he played 1 playoff game, missed the rest due to injury. He's turning 28 in October, still could be in the prime of his career. But if you make a list of top 40 players in the NBA, is he on it? Is he on top 50 players in the NBA? I don't think so. I'd have to make that list. But you say 30 teams. I would say on average each team has about 2 players that are better than him, which would be 60 players. So, seems like an overpay. But he's actually the first big free agent that the Grizzlies have ever signed. Well, from another team. They've re-signed some of their own to big contracts. But, have never been able to get a free agent from another team, at least a big name. And Chandler Parsons making near $24 million a year. Sometimes teams like the Grizzlies, Bucks, etc. need to overpay for players in order to have a chance at them. So, number 6 on the list is Chandler Parsons. Number 5, biggest WTF contract goes to Austin Rivers. Is there nepotism involved in this one? Not really sure. Rivers signed a 3-year, $32 million contract to stay with the Los Angeles Clippers. Of course, his father, Doc Rivers, is team president and head coach. He did have a career-high 8.9 points per game last season. Still very young, turns 24 on August 1st, but his player efficiency rating this past season, 11.1. Career of 9.7. And as a backup point guard, does play some shooting guard too, but he is seen as the backup point guard to Chris Paul. Only averaged 1.9 assists per game last season. Definitely has been somewhat of a bust in the NBA. Can't say that yet. Had a decent year last year, but definitely seems like a lot of money for Austin Rivers. Number 4 on the list, and somewhat similar to Jerome James, not quite, because this guy has shown the ability to play in the regular season as well. But a strong postseason definitely got him paid more money than he would have without that postseason. And that's Bismack Biyombo, signing with the Orlando Magic, 4 years, $72 million. For a guy who provides little offense. This past season for the Raptors, in 22 minutes per game, 5.5 points per game, strong rebounder and shot blocker, 8 rebounds, 1.6 blocks per game. No one's denying that he could bring it on the defensive end and, clean up the glass. But just doesn't provide much on offense. 4.6 points per game the last 5 seasons. Just to show you how little... teams are going after him in free agency this past year. He signed a 2-year, $6 million contract with the Raptors last season. Player option for the second year, which he declined and parlayed into an $18 million a year contract. Of course, he did put up numbers when Jonas Valanciunas went down with injury in the playoffs. Had a few 20-rebound games. I just don't know about what the Magic are really doing this off season. I just feel like they're, pulling strings. I can't even explain it. Jeff Green not on this list, really only because he was only signed to a 1-year deal. But $15 million, he's really been disappointing the past 2 or 3 years. I just don't really see the offense on this team. You got Elfrid Payton at point guard, who really can't shoot. You got Biyombo now as your starting center, which, when you're going to pay him that much, you got to assume that he will start, and they will look for a trade partner for Nikola Vucevic. Of course, Biyombo is a better defensive player, but Vucevic was pretty much the best offensive player on the Magic. Looking more and more like they're going to cut ties with him. Serge Ibaka, another nice defensive player. Can hit the three-pointer, but isn't exactly elite on offense. Just doesn't seem like a team that's going to be able to score enough. The Magic, signed DJ Augustine, backup point guard. Nothing special there. We'll see, though. Biyombo, $18 million a year. Seems like a lot. Does bring it on the defensive end, I will admit that. This doesn't provide much offense. Number 3, Solomon Hill, signing with the New Orleans Pelicans, 4 years, $52 million, $13 million a season, for a guy who, with the Indiana Pacers last year, averaged 4.2 points per game. And he's getting $13 million a year, so, you can multiply his scoring average by 3. Still does not equal the amount per season he will get in millions from the Pelicans. He did play more the season prior due to Paul George missing almost the entire year. Averaged 8.9 points per game. That was in 29 minutes per game, 39.6% field goal shooting. Hasn't shown much of a three-point shot during his NBA career, 32.4% from downtown in his first 3 NBA seasons. 25 years old, was the 23rd pick in 2013, so it's not like he was a, can't-miss prospect coming into the league. It just seems like the Pelicans really overpaid for him. Number 3, Solomon Hill. Number 2, and this is probably the best player on the list. If we went by skills, weren't looking at contract at all. If you could have any of these 10 players, this would be the guy nearly unanimously that would be chosen. But just the absurd amount of money he's going to be making, that is Mike Conley, re-signing with the Grizzlies for 5 years, $153 million. There have been 3 players in NBA history that have signed contracts for $30 million plus a season. 1, Michael Jordan. 2, Kobe Bryant. 3, Mike Conley. Can you name which guy doesn't necessarily belong on that list? And that's not, bringing down Mike Conley's game. He's a very, very good point guard, but in 9 seasons, he has 0 All-Star appearances. He's just not an elite point guard. He's not on the level of a Chris Paul. Steph Curry, of course. There's so many good point guards in the NBA today. Conley is a very good point guard. Is he a top 10 point guard? That's arguable. If he is, he's at the bottom portion of that top 10. So to be making $30.6 million a season, especially a guy whose season ended short last year due to an Achilles injury. In 56 games, 15.3 points per game, 6.1 assists per game. His career highs in points, 17.2. Assists, 6.5. again, very good point guard. But to get the 5 years, $153 million, again, Grizzlies have to overpay for even their own free agents in order to get them to stay. Just as a smaller market team. But, we'll see. As I mentioned, just Mike Conley. No, I don't think anyone would really put him in their top 5 point guards in the NBA. Yet here he is, $30.6 million a season. One of 3 players ever to get $30 million annually in a contract. Mike Conley, number 2. But there's one contract that is more WTF, and it's another team that just seems desperate to make moves. Getting Luol Deng, 4 years, $72 million, does seem high as well. But with some of these other contracts, it's not that bad. Re-signing Jordan Clarkson, 4 years, I believe $50 million, not that bad. But Timofey Mozgov, 4 years, $64 million. To be the Lakers' new starting center. He will turn 30 on July 16th. And, yes, he won a championship with the Cavaliers, but did he really play a role on that championship team? He got more playing time in the regular season, 17.4 minutes per game, but, the stats don't jump out. 6.3 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, 0.8 blocks. Cavaliers surely didn't seem to need him in that postseason run because I believe he played in about half of their games and played 5.8 minutes per game in the playoffs. 1.2 points per game, 1.6 rebounds per game. So Mozgov had little to no effect during the Cavaliers playoff run that got them an NBA championship. Yet here are the Lakers giving him $16 million a year on the first day of free agency. Not to say Mozgov hasn't shown, he's a capable center in the league. Did actually play much more of a role the previous season for the Cavaliers as they made the NBA Finals. But even so, it just seems there's just no explanation how Timofey Mozgov could get $16 million a season. Let me say real quick though, remember last season when, it almost seemed like the center was dying? Draymond Green was playing center for the Warriors, and 7-footers just didn't seem as important. Well, look at some of the guys I named on this list. Mozgov, 4 years, $64 million. Yamahimi, also 4 years, $64 million. Biyombo, 4 years, $72 million. So, clearly the center has not died yet. All those guys are about 7 feet tall, and here they are getting $16 and $18 million a year. They're not even, the elite centers in the league. So clearly these teams still have size as one of their priorities. Center is far from dead. And, these are just a few of the WTF contracts that have been handed out so far this offseason. Of course, still a lot of free agents left out on the market. There will be more included, and I'm sure I'll get to talk about some of them next week. For now, though, this week's episode is over. I thank you all so much for listening here to episode number 74. Amazing that we've already done 74 episodes. Greatly appreciate every one of my listeners. Again, enjoy your 4th of July weekend. Enjoy your Monday off tomorrow. Until next week, goodbye, everyone.